There's a new podcast out each week. This man talks to a celebrated wide receiver and about their career journey, life, and everything in between. New episodes of WR1 drops every single Thursday. Cris Carter, Pro Football Hall of Famer, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. How are you, sir?
Rich, I'm doing very good. I have to apologize. I'm in New York City.
Yes, I know.
I'm trying to get my COVID card replaced because you can't go anywhere without one here.
Right.
So I'm at a CVS. It might be a little noisy, so not as professional as I'd like to be.
All good.
Thanks for having me on the show.
I also saw that you were on Good Morning Football today. I saw that. I peeped that, as the kids say. So that looked like fun for you and everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, talking football, why wouldn't it be fun? Got a game tonight. Had an exciting week number one, leading into a great week number two. So, yes, it was a good day.
Okay. Now, and I appreciate you're in the CVS getting your card replaced. But let's talk a little bit of ball right here after week number one. Your most impressive performance of any wide receiver in week one would be what? Which one did you like?
Wow, of any wide receiver?
Yes, sir. Which one would you like?
Most impressive? Well, I'm just going to – can I say this?
Yes, sir.
Waller's a great player, but he's not the best player I've ever seen compared to John Gruden, what he said.
Right. But Waller had a heck of a week. There's no doubt about that. That's true.
Well, I was really excited, though, that the guys – because we're getting a lot of guys drafted in the first round, and it's really hard to have success. Last year we saw Justin Jefferson. That's not going to be every year, but it's nice to be able to see Devontae Smith, Jamar, especially after a bad preseason, Jamar Chase there with the Bengals, bust up my Vikings, have a good game against them, and then Waddle in Miami. Like, these coordinators are figuring out a way to be able to get these young guys involved in the game, and having fresh wide receivers in the game, good ones, is good for the game.
And what happened? What's going on, do you think, with Brandon Aiyuk? I mean, you've been there, you've done that, you've heard what coaches say publicly, you know what probably goes on behind the scenes. What do you think is going on with San Francisco's receiver and the coach saying essentially that, he's hurt, but that's part of the reason why he hasn't gotten enough snaps, and you got to be appreciably better than the guy behind you or the guy in front of you. What do you think is happening there, Chris?
Well, for one, they got a talented roster. And in the NFL, man, if you're not putting up the numbers and everything, regardless of where you're drafted, eventually they're going to be able to find you out. And we know Kyle well enough that if the guy was making plays, he would be out there. And you have to trust what people – they sit and watch hundreds of hours of tapes. They go to all these practices. I really listen to what the coaches are saying. So what's happened there is the receivers put the coach in a position that he's got to be able to say things like that because he didn't have anything good to say.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately the transition from being a good college wide receiver, especially he was really good with the ball in his hand, to trying to be a refined route runner, things like that, that's where we start losing. And that's where I think Coach Shanahan was trying to tell us without telling us.
What do you think Julio Jones is thinking after his coach calls him out in week one and a blowout loss in his new spot for a penalty, a 15-yarder that cost his team in the first quarter of eventually a blowout game? What do you think Julio's thinking about his coach Vrabel right now, Cris Carter?
You know Julio well enough. Julio is not the typical wide receiver. Julio was top five coming out of high school, five-star best receiver, but top five talent, chose to go to Alabama with Nick Saban. And let me tell you something. His tenure there, because I know Nick, he never asked for an easy way. There was no harder worker in practice, in the games. A couple times he was hurt. They had to keep him out. So Julio has heard everything. And to me, the best players that have played this game, they want to be coached up. And that helps the Titans. Because if Vrabel can chew out Julio Jones, he can chew out a bunch of people. And I'm sure they had a bunch of bad plays. Their left tackle didn't play good either. So that's not the only person he was cussing out. But Julio, he's not the typical wide receiver. I'm sure he brushed it off. I'm sure Vrabel said something to him personally. He didn't leave it up for all that air between what he said to the media, because he knows the media is going to go back to talk to Julio. So he's a grown man. He goes, talks to Julio, lets him know. And a lot of times in a situation like that, Dennis Green would tell you before the meeting, I'm going to call you out in front of everybody. He's like, okay.
What do you mean?
And it really sets the temperature for the team and for what their expectations are.
Yeah, give me that story. Dennis Green would do what? Come on now. Really? He'd tell you, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you out, so be careful. Be ready for it.
Well, I used to meet with him on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd always write the report on the team. How's the locker room doing? And just like Belichick putting Brady in the bad place, Dennis Green would put you in the conversations as far as if that's what he wanted to do, that's what he would put his star players in.
Cris Carter here on the Rich Eisen Show, my Hall of Fame friend sitting there in New York City after he did some Good Morning Football, and you got your podcast WR1 each week. So this pod, is it wide receiver one or WR1? What are you calling it, Cris?
It's WR1.
Okay, all right.
It's wide receivers only.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've been out in the podcast world. How am I going to create a niche? So for me, it's just talking to the most exciting position.
Yep.
The personalities are across the board through the last several decades. So for me, I just thought that being a former wide receiver, getting their perspective on life, playing the game, what forced them to the position, all those things is what we talk about.
Well, the question is so wide receiver 2s and 3s are not going to be in the invite list? Only WR1s, Cris?
No, it's like...
so Irv, yes, Alvin Harper, no? Like, is that basically the way it's going to go?
No, it's not by is he a 1, 2, or... No. This is season 1.
Oh. Okay. WR1 season...
wide receiver 2.
Okay. Got it. Understood. And
after a very, very healthy response from the public, there will be a wide receiver 2.
I like That's nice.
All right, I'm going to continue on with this line of questioning because Cris can handle it. Cris can handle it. Because I thought it was just WR1, so only wide receiver 1s were allowed on. So I was going to ask you if that was the case, would you have been allowed on the podcast when Randy Moss was with the Vikings? Cris Carter.
Rich Eisen. No, for real. You my guy, man. I like you a lot. So I'm going to let you know.
Yes.
No matter what rule you have, no matter what law you have, you need to have some addendum to the rule.
Yes.
Now, there are going to be occasions where you're going to have 2 number 1s on the field. Before we got Randy Moss in Minnesota, Jake Reed and myself had compiled 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Both of us, NFL records, before we got Randy Moss. Moss just kept the party going, man. We did another 3, so I had 7 years in a row where the other guy across from me had 1,000. So what would you make of that?
Oh, that sounds like a wide receiver 1 to me. I just was...
Oh, okay.
I was just wondering, about the velvet ropes you've placed around your guest list here for your pod. Because, I mean, you got Calvin, you got Mike Evans, those are clearly wide receiver 1s. What did you talk about with Calvin? I mean, what a fascinating Hall of Fame speech I heard from him. We all heard from him back in August.
Yes.
Cris, what did you talk about with Calvin?
I mean, Calvin's a smart guy. I mean, he's got a great deal of interest. Of course, we talked about the Detroit situation, and it really just boiled down to respect about the money. He felt like there were a lot of games he went out there hurt, injured, didn't say anything. And when he decided to walk away because medically he felt like he couldn't continue. I mean, he's from a family of doctors. Like all his relatives, aunts and uncles and stuff are doctors and stuff. He thinks he's the dummy in the family. And when he just said that, it hurt his pride because he knew what his body was enduring. That probably robbed him of another 3 to 5 years playing that we as fans would have been able to see Calvin Johnson. We talked about the medical marijuana business that he's involved in.
Yes.
And more of assisting people for pain, not for recreational use, but the science behind it, concussions, how potentially it can assist in things like that. Very, very good conversation. Calvin's one of the guys, no matter what era you look at, he's one of the people that you respect. Played the game the right way, lives the right way. Been a great role model, great spokesperson for the game.
Well, I was sitting there with my buddy Steve Weich, my NFL media group colleague Steve Weich, on the set listening to that speech, and we were just looking at each other, nodding our heads about how terrific it was and the points he was making about, medical marijuana and how it could be used in a way that is not allowed in so many different places because it's being thought that it's just a a workaround for recreational use. And then when the speech was over, we both looked at each other and said there was one mention missing from the entire speech, and it was the Detroit Lions. He did not say the franchise's team name once in that speech. We didn't. I don't think we missed it, and we heard. I mean, that was an outlier for the entire. And there were 19 speeches that weekend, and I think it was the only one where somebody didn't mention the team that he played for a single time. Chris,
I mean, that's your moment, and for him, he's not shying away from the subject. He's not happy with Detroit. He doesn't have an existing relationship with them right now, and it's all over money. I think he made a statement and said, $1.6 million make me feel better. So, you know, when you have a player, it's your responsibility, especially when you're drafting top 5, top 10, which Detroit has done for a while. And these guys have played the game, done things the right way. You're supposed to take care of them in a way. I'm not saying all players should be settled, but the relationship with Detroit and Calvin Johnson, the only team that he knows, it should be better than what it is.
Yeah, well, look, Chris, I look forward to hearing all of these conversations on your new pod. Episodes air every single Thursday, including today, WR1. Can you tell CVS to turn the music down? I mean, my God. Sounds like you're in a Katy Perry concert there.
Hey, man, we're trying to get people vaccinated. People are getting COVID.
Okay.
Like it's
got to do it right.
I'm in the quietest spot in the CVS. Okay, this is it, bro.
All right, I'll let you go, but I do want to ask you a trivia question first, Chris. Ready for this trivia question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My guys know what's coming, and they're hiding underneath they're hiding underneath right now
Tread
their
lightly,
desk.
Rich. Tread
No,
lightly.
it's okay. We go way back. This man
I
is.
understand,
We go
but-
way back. Okay.
Okay.
You've heard about the historical alliance, right, in college football between the Big Ten and the ACC and the Pac-12, right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. Which school in the Big Ten came up with the first win in the history of the historical alliance when one member of the historical alliance, like, say, the Big Ten, played another, like, say, the Pac-12? Which school did that first for the Big Ten?
I mean, if it's on your show, I don't have any clue. But I mean, we lost to Oregon, but things are still exciting. Unless you get a running attack, somebody can run for 200 yards. We are going to have you, okay? We are going to, since you brought it up.
Yeah, sure.
All right?
Okay. Yeah.
You tell me something. I got a trivia question. Tell me this wins between the Wolverines when they played the Buckeyes in the game. How many days has it been? It's close to 700 days before you start looking.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Chris. I don't know if the reception's any good in the CVS.
It's been a long time, man. It's in the thousands, bro. It's in the thousands.
It's in the thousands, bro. Might be my favorite line that I've had thrown at me by you, Chris. Hey, man. Hey, look, you be safe, and I want to thank you here, because I don't know if you've been on since then, but you and your time that you gave for the charity run for Run Rich Run at SoFi. And I will say this, and it's not just because I was busting your stones moments ago, even though you busted mine back, but Vic ran one really fast, but lost amongst that was you not only running one damn near sub 5, but you were one of the few that could have gone again if necessary, because everybody else was not at that time. You crushed it, Chris Carter.
Rich, you're doing great things, and a lot of times people try to reinvent the wheel, come up with another foundation, but when people are doing stuff like you're doing, why don't we just piggyback and help support what you're doing?
Thanks,
so
Chris.
that's what we decided to do. You're a great guy. Been doing great work for a while, and it's not your fault you went to Michigan. It's not your fault. So for me, I got in a little trouble when I was earlier, so I'm still doing community service. So every time I work with you, it's just community service.
I appreciate that, Chris Carter. Let's talk more. Be safe. Go get that card again, and WR1 every week, including today. New podcast with Chris, talking to only the finest at the position. Let's do it again soon, Chris. You be well.
I appreciate it, Rich.
You got it. It's Chris Carter, everybody, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.